My name is Dr. Nusrat Jahan, and I was 33 when I learned that 9 years of keeping a clinic alive could be erased from a prescription pad before the ink dried, and that the only thing more invisible than a daughter who holds the roof up is a daughter who finally lets it fall. Not with a shout, not with a slammed door. With a manila envelope, a notary stamp, and a filing date that had already passed while they were still choosing their Punjabis. I want to be clear about what this story is. It is not a revenge fantasy. There are no poisoned syrups, no burned ledgers lit for spectacle, no cinematic monologue delivered through tears. It is the sound of a machine stopping because one person stopped oiling it. The machine in this case was a family. My family. They ran a small diagnostic center, Jahan Diagnostic, 3 machines, in a converted flat above the pharmacy, held in a partnership that bore my brother's name like a vanity plate on a car he had not paid for. For 9 years, I had been the one who read the x-rays, managed the lab protocols, trained the technicians, and kept the center accredited with the health directorate. My brother Imran held the title of managing director. I held an MBBS and a radiology diploma I had earned 7 years earlier, credentials his name could not legally carry because he had never passed the medical licensing exam. They knew this. They had known it for years. What they did not know was that I had already filed a change of registered medical practitioner with the health directorate. The form was dated February 14th. The compliance inspection was scheduled for March 15th, and on March 12th my family invited a corporate hospital chain to tour the center over brunch, hoping to sell a referral contract they had not earned without me. I was invited too. They thought I was coming to arrange the Shingara. Visual, a school stage, a trophy, a boy's new cricket bat. I was 10 the first time I understood that my hands were useful to them, in a way my voice was not. The winter I turned 10, our school held its first science quiz, and my parents entered Imran, who was 12 and had never memorized a single element without complaining, because they said the quiz was good for the center's profile. I spent 3 nights at the dining table after dinner, writing his cue cards on the periodic table, on human anatomy, on the basics of radiography, with facts sharp enough to cut glass and mnemonics I had invented myself. Imran watched cricket while I tested him in the mirror. On the day of the finals, I carried his cards to the auditorium in a rubber band, still warm from my pocket, the edges soft from handling. My mother patted my knee and said I was her little helper, that she didn't know what they would do without me. At the judges' table, the organizer asked who had prepared the material. My father stepped forward and said Imran had developed the knowledge that he was learning the family business, that his son had a real head for science. Imran stood beside him in a clean Punjabi, smiling at the judges, while I was sent to the back to arrange the chairs. The quiz won a 500 takaki. Imran accepted it with a speech about hard work and tradition that I had written the night before. That night, the 500 taka bought Imran a new cricket bat, a Pakistani willow with straight grain. I received a 50 taka note and a pat on the head. I did not cry in front of them. I cried in the center storeroom, surrounded by boxes of film developer, because my mother had said Nusrat's always been our foundation. Why would we change that? She said it while stirring the dal, not looking up, the way you note that the pressure cooker is whistling or that the rickshaw walla has come. I was useful. I was not worth a trophy. Visual, a dining table, a biscuit tin of receipts, a calculator doll. I was 16 when I found the 42,000 taka deduction. My father had bought a second ultrasound machine that year, a portable unit with a colored Doppler, and he was drowning in receipts he had shoved into a biscuit tin labeled taxes in black marker. The tin sat on the dining table for 3 weeks. I organized them alphabetically, then chronologically, then found the accelerated depreciation schedule he had forgotten to file for the new equipment and the VAT rebate from the September audit. 42,000 taka. That was the exact difference between my father owing the tax office 18,000 and getting a refund of 24,000 that spring. He clapped me on the shoulder at dinner and told my mother I had a real head for business, that I was a natural. I asked if I could be added to the partnership bank account, so I could pay the reagent invoices directly instead of waiting 3 days for him to find his checkbook and sign every bill. My mother reached across the table and patted my hand. "Nusrat's always been our foundation," she said. "Imran needs to learn the financial side for his BBA applications. Why would we change that?" I looked at my father. He was already talking to Imran about his cricket average. The 42,000 taka saved the center that year. It paid for Imran's summer coaching camp in Chittagong. My name did not appear on a single document, not the partnership deed, not the bank account, not the equipment lease. I was useful. I was not worth a signature. Visual, a medical diploma, a bus ticket, a crossed-out date. I completed my MBBS at 24 with a diploma in radiology and an offer to join a hospital in Dhaka, 50 minutes north by bus, a place with an MRI machine that people came from all over the country to use. The same week, my mother had a bad turn with her diabetes. Nothing catastrophic, the doctor said, but she needed to reduce stress and avoid early mornings and heavy lifting. My father called me into the kitchen the Sunday after her discharge and said the center needed a lab manager. Just for now. Just until my mother was back on her feet and feeling like herself again. Imran was 26, working at a pharmaceutical company in Moti Hill, building his sales territory, as my mother put it, her voice lifting on the word territory, like it was a fragile thing that needed protection. He was too busy. I was not too busy. I was available. That was the word she used. Available. Oh. It sold. Never five time. As if I were a waiting room. How are we? As if I had no edges. I moved back into my childhood bedroom, the one with the faded calendar and the desk that still had my S-key certificate in the drawer. I took the bus 50 minutes each way to my hospital job and handled the Jahan records at night, sitting on the edge of my bed with a laptop that overheated and a phone that rang until 11. I read the X-rays. I managed the reagents. I calibrated the ultrasound at midnight with a manual I downloaded and a screwdriver I bought myself because the maintenance budget my father set was imaginary. For 9 years, this was the rhythm. 9 years. I want you to hold that number. 3,285 days, more or less, of being the one who answered the phone when a doctor needed an emergency report at 2 in the morning, who drove to the center in monsoon floods to check the generator because my father couldn't lift the fuel cans, who learned the health directorate codes by heart because no one else would read. The personal cost was not the labor. The labor I could do in my sleep by year 4. The cost was the life I did not build while I was oiling the machine. Visual. A studio flat listing. A red pen crossing out a date. At 26, I had saved 60,000 taka and found a studio flat in Mohammedpur, 10 minutes from the hospital, with a window that faced east and a ceiling fan that rattled but worked. I gave notice at home. I packed 2 suitcases. My mother cried. Not hard, not with noise, just enough to air in the kitchen feel heavy and wet, the way it feels before a nor'wester. She said my father still wasn't strong enough to handle the stress of new health regulations, that Imran was up for a promotion and couldn't be distracted by machine breakdowns, that the doctors only trusted me, that I was the only one who knew the lab software password, and the name of the reliable technician, and the exact day the directorate inspector liked to visit. She did not say, "Please stay." She said, "Nusrat's always been our foundation." I unpacked my suitcases. The flat went to a nurse named Rena who worked the night shift. I watched her carry a money plant into the building from the bus window. I stayed for 3 more years. At 29, I met someone there. His name was Rafiq. He taught physiology at the medical college and laughed at my jokes about contrast dyes. A laugh that made other people in the tea stall turn to look. We dated for 12 months. He had a small flat in Denmondi with a balcony and a cat that tolerated me. He wanted me to move in with him after ED. I wanted to. But the October directorate inspection was due, and the X-ray machine had a calibration issue that required daily check-ins with the engineer because my father had chosen the cheapest service contract. My mother had started introducing Rafiq as Nusrat's friend from the hospital even after I corrected her twice at Friday lunch. Rafiq asked me once directly why Imran's name was on the partnership deed when I was the one who handled every crisis. I did not have an answer that sounded sane outside my own head. I said I was helping the family. He looked at me for a long time. He left after 14 months. Not dramatically. No slammed doors. He just stopped asking me to choose him. I did not blame him. What? Did you watch some? How much were you? I had not chosen him. I had chosen the lab reports, the machine calibrations, the family that needed me to be available for 9 years. Visual, a health directorate seminar, a stack of pamphlets, a notepad. The mechanism was born in a health directorate seminar I attended alone on a Tuesday night in January. I was 32. The directorate had passed a new Private Health Facility Act, effective January 1st, requiring every licensed diagnostic center to have a registered medical practitioner who held a current license from the directorate and who was the designated clinical authority responsible for all diagnostic reports and equipment certification. The license required a medical degree, a diploma in the relevant specialty, and a directorate registration exam. Imran had never taken it. He had never intended to. I had cleared the radiology diploma in 2017, after a surgeon questioned an X-ray reading, and I realized I needed legal standing to sign reports under my own credentials. I passed on the first attempt. My license number was DMC 2017 5567. I was the only person in my family who could legally head the center under the new act. The directorate clerk explained that existing designations would expire on March 15th, unless renewed with the licensed practitioner's signature and a notarized affidavit of active practice. I sat in the back row with a notepad and wrote down every deadline. Imran sat at home, watching cricket My mother had asked me to go because, as she said, I was the one who understood that kind of thing. She did not ask what the act meant. She assumed I would handle it. She was correct, but I understood something else that night. The act created a paper trail. It required the directorate to keep a public record of the registered practitioner, and it allowed any licensed practitioner to file a change of designation with 30 days' notice, provided they could demonstrate they had been performing the duty. I had 9 years of diagnostic reports, equipment logs, and inspection records with my signature on them. I had a lever. It was boring. It was legal. It was mine. Visual, a newspaper, a man in a white coat, a framed article. The erasure did not happen all at once. It accrued like interest on a debt no one intended to pay. In January of my 33rd year, a local newspaper featured Imran as the visionary director behind Jahan Diagnostics' digital transformation. The photographer shot him in the center, wearing a white coat with his name embroidered, holding a tablet over an ultrasound screen. The white coat was mine. The tablet was from my desk. The article quoted him at length about his philosophy of modern diagnostics. He spoke for 15 minutes without mentioning a single report protocol, a single quality control check, or the fact that the X-ray machine had been out of calibration for 3 weeks, and I had been logging phantom images every morning while he was in Cox's Bazar. My mother framed the article. My father sent the link to every relative on WhatsApp. I was mentioned once in the final paragraph as the dedicated lab support that keeps the reports moving. I read it while reviewing a chest X-ray, the light box still glowing behind me. By then, the form was already sitting in a file in Mohakali, waiting. I just hadn't decided if I would use it. Visual, a bank lobby, a glass conference room, a business cargo. The second incident happened 2 weeks later. My mother asked me to accompany Imran to the bank to help him organize the financials for the investors' review. She said it casually, while folding patient gowns, as if she were asking me to pick up milk. I had brought my laptop, my external drive, and a binder of records I had maintained for 9 years. Every equipment log pressed flat, every report annotated in the margins with findings and follow-up notes. The loan officer, a woman named Farzana with silver hair and a black saree, asked Imran about the clinical certifications. Imran hesitated. No, do you know? He looked at me. I answered. I explained the quality control protocol, the radiation safety plan, the equipment calibration documentation, and the continuing education requirements for the last 3 licensing periods. Farzana turned to me, genuinely impressed, and asked if I was the registered practitioner. Imran laughed. It was a sound I knew well, the laugh he used when he was uncomfortable and wanted to reclaim the room. He said I was his assistant, that I helped out with the paperwork, that he was the managing director, but he liked to keep his sister busy. He said it like a joke between professionals. Farzana did not laugh. Yeah. She looked at me for 1 second longer than was polite. I looked at the binder. I had color-coded the diagnostic histories by quarter. I had highlighted the 1,80,000 taka in personal funds I had advanced to cover reagent bills during the 8-month slump in 2022. The months Imran had been in Dubai. I had not listed those advances as loans. I had listed them as operational support in the ledger, language that made them sound voluntary. Imran signed the bank disclosure forms with a pen I had brought from my flat. My name appeared nowhere on the documents, not even as a witness. Farzana had him her business card. She did not hand me one. No, I just saved you a card too. I drove home in silence while Imran talked about the car he might buy with his share, a white Toyota Allion he had already picked out online. I stared at the road and thought about the Health Directorate Act. I thought about my license number. Joel Nasukajid MC 2017 5567. I thought about how easy it would be to file a single form with a notary public and a postage stamp. How easy and how permanent. Visual. A directorate office. A notary stamp. Pressing into paper. I filed the form on February 14. I took a personal day from the center, the first one I had used in 18 months. I told no one. Not my mother, not Imran, not the technician who covered my shift. I took the bus to the directorate office in Mohakali with a folder of proof. 9 years of diagnostic reports with my signature as the reading radiologist, equipment logs paid from my personal account, inspection records prepared by my hand, and my license card laminated in plastic. The clerk was a man named Harun, with reading glasses on a chain and a cough that rattled in his chest. He reviewed the documents for 14 minutes without speaking. He said the change of registered practitioner would be processed within 5 business days, and the new certificate would be mailed to the address on file. I gave him my flat address in Mohammedpur, not the family house in Old Dhaka. He did not ask why. He stamped the form with a sound like a door closing and handed me a carbon copy. I paid the 1,000 taka filing fee with my own debit card. I kept the receipt. I had already mailed the form. It was sitting in a file in Mohakali, waiting. Then I went to the post office and sent a registered letter to the hospital chain's attorney, Patricia Vance, whose name I had found on the company's website under due diligence team. The letter was 1 page, single-spaced, with no greeting beyond the formal address. It stated that as of March 1st, the designated registered practitioner for Jahan Diagnostic had changed pursuant to Health Act 14B, and that any sale, inspection, or transfer of clinical authority required my signature and physical presence. By law. I did not threaten. I did not plead. I did not explain my reasons. I stated facts in the flattest language I knew, the language of regulators and clerks. I kept the registered mail receipt with its tracking number. I kept the stamped copy of the filing. I kept the 1 taka receipt in an envelope labeled JD, administrative. I went home and made a cup of tea and sat on my couch and waited for March 12th. The family did not know. They were planning the brunch menu. They were planning the sale. They were planning to hand me the napkins and ask me to check the shingara. Visual. A hotel conference room. A silver for tea service. A shingara display. March 12th arrived warm and bright, a morning that felt like a promise no one asked for. My mother had rented the conference room at the Westin because she said it impressed investors, gave them a sense of the prestige they were buying into, excellence that came from attention to detail. There were white tablecloths and a silver tea service and a platter of shingara from the shop Imran liked, the one that charged 20 taka for a piece. I arrive at 10:45, wearing a handloom saree I had bought for a conference 3 years ago and never worn because my mother had called that morning to say my father was having a bad day, and could I please check the ups in the center basement. My mother kissed my cheek and told me to make sure the tea was strong and to set out the rock sugar, not the white cubes, because Mr. Chowdhury was a man who noticed details. Imran wore a navy suit that cost more than my monthly rent, the suit he had bought with the bonus from his pharmaceutical company after I had covered the equipment insurance premium that January. My father stood by the window practicing his handshake in the glass reflection, his palm opening and closing like a fish gasping. The buyer arrived at 11 o'clock exactly. His name was Mr. Chowdhury. He was 60, maybe 65, with a mustache that looked expensive and a watch that caught the light and held it like a threat. He brought his attorney, Patricia Vance, a woman in a burgundy blazer who carried a leather folio and did not smile when she shook Imran's hand. She looked at me as she entered the room. I was standing by the tea station. I nodded. He nodded back. It was a small movement, barely visible, but it held weight I could feel in my collarbone. My mother poured the tea into china cups. I did not touch the pot. I did not move to help her. Imran launched into his presentation, a slideshow on a laptop I had configured for him the night before, the slides I had designed with the clinical charts I had compiled from 9 years of data. He talked about patient volume. He talked about report accuracy. He talked about his hands-on leadership style and his personal relationships with the referring surgeons. He had met 2 surgeons in 9 years. I had met all of them. My mother beamed at him like he was a photograph she had always wanted to frame. My father nodded along, his eyes watery with pride or tea. Patricia Vance took notes with a fountain pen that scratched against the paper. She asked one question while Imran was mid-sentence about projected expansion. Who holds the current medical license for this facility? Imran waved his hand, as if brushing away a fly. I oversee all of that, he said. My sister helps with the paperwork, but I'm the managing director on every document. Patricia Vance stopped writing. She looked at me again, her eyes level and calm. I was still holding my manila envelope. My fingers were not shaking, although. Visual. A china cup. A fountain pen resting on a legal pad. Young. Imran's answer hung in the air like smoke from a blown candle. Mr. Chowdhury smiled, a smile that meant he was ready to move to numbers, to patient throughput, and franchise fees, the part of the meeting where men like him felt most at home. My mother filled the silence before it could become awkward. Nusrat's always been our foundation, she said, turning to Mr. Chowdhury with a hostess's grace, as if she were explaining why the napkins matched the curtains, or why the flowers were marigold. She's been doing the day-to-day for, 9 years now? She laughed, a sound like silverware settling. We always say she's the engine, and Imran is the steering wheel. My father chuckled into his tea. Imran straightened his tie and let the metaphor sit there, let it grow roots in the room. Mr. You. Chowdhury looked at me with a new expression, the look of a man who has just been told where the bathroom is, a brief acknowledgement before returning to the important people. Patricia Vance did not look at me. No. She looked at Imran with the flat patience of someone who has heard this particular lie before. Mr. Yahan, she said, her voice even and unhurried. Are you stating that you personally hold the directorate medical license required under Act 14B? Imran's smile faltered for half a second, a crack in the glaze. I hold the management title, he said. The license is a formality. My sister took the exams, but I run the center. I make the decisions. My mother touched Mr. Chowdhury's arm, a gesture of reassurance. Nusrat's always been our foundation, she said. Why would we change that? The phrase again. The exact words, delivered with the same casual cruelty as the day she had denied me the quiz trophy. The same dismissive music as the night she had kept me from the studio flat. I felt them land in my sternum like a bookmark placed in a chapter I had already read 100 times and was now ready to close. Patricia Vance closed her folio. The snap of leather was the only sound in the room for 2 full seconds. Mr. Chowdhury looked at his attorney confused, his smile dimming. My mother was still talking about my thoroughness, my reliability, my availability, the way I never took vacations and answered my phone at midnight. She was selling my labor as a feature of the center, like a new ultrasound machine or a renovated waiting room or a reliable reporting system. Imran joined in, explaining that I would of course stay on through the transition, that I was part of the package, that the investor would find me invaluable, that he had already factored my continued management into the pro forma. He said it without asking me. No. He said it as if he were offering a tool that came with the building, an X-ray viewer or a set of lead aprons. I set my envelope on the table. The sound was soft, paper against cloth. It was enough. Visual. A manila envelope. A hand sliding documents across mahogany. I need to correct the record, I said. My voice was level even, the same tone I used when telling a doctor that their requisition form was incomplete. I had practiced the sentence in my car on the drive over, speaking it to the steering wheel until it sounded like weather, like a forecast, like something that simply was. I opened the envelope. The flap made a clean tearing sound. I slid the first document across the table to Patricia Vance. It was the certified copy of the change of registered practitioner form filed with the Health Directorate on February 14th and processed on March 1st, bearing the clerk's stamp and my signature in blue ink. This is the change of registered practitioner form, I said, filed with the Health Directorate on February 14th and processed on March 1st. The previous designation of Imran Jahan was terminated by operation of Act 14B, which requires the licensed practitioner to be the designated clinical authority of record. I slid the second document. It was my medical license number D 2017-5567, issued 7 years ago, current through next December, with my photograph laminated in the corner. This is my medical license, I said. Number DMC 2017-5567. I passed the radiology diploma in 2017. I passed on the first attempt. My brother has never held a medical license. I slid the third document, a spreadsheet printed on green paper. This is a ledger of operational contributions from my personal funds to Jahan Diagnostic over the last 9 years, I said, totaling 1,80,000 taka. None of these have been repaid. None were documented as loans in the partnership deed. They were drawn from my personal savings to cover reagent shortfalls, equipment repairs, and insurance premium delinquencies that occurred when the partnership account was empty. Imran laughed. It was a high, nervous sound, the laugh of a child caught in a lie he thought was too small to matter. Nusrat, what is this? He said. Hey, are you having some kind of episode? My mother looked at my father, her eyes wide and wet. My father looked at the documents as if they were written in a language he had never learned to read, his mouth slightly open, his hand hovering over his chest. I did not look at any of them. I looked at Patricia Vance. She was reading the filing with a concentration that excluded the rest of the room, her finger moving down the page line by line. She turned to Mr. Chowdhury. "Mr. Chowdhury," she said, her voice carrying the weight of her 15 years of practicing law, according to the partnership registration and the health directorate records, which I verified this morning. "Dr. Jahan has been this certified registered practitioner since March 1st. Mr. Afterna Almajian. Jahan has no active medical license on file. Under the franchise agreement's representation and warranties clause, this constitutes a material misrepresentation in the sale disclosure. The investor is entitled to terminate due diligence immediately." Mr. Chowdhury's face changed. The mustache did not look expensive anymore. It looked like a mask that had slipped. "Imran," he said, "is this true? You told me you ran this center personally." Imran stood up. His chair scraped the floor with a sound like a scream. "She's my sister," he said, his voice rising. "She works for me. This is a family misunderstanding. She's upset about the sale, it's all. She's emotional." Patricia Vance did not look up from the ledger. She turned a page. "Dr. Jahan," she said, "did you file this change of designation independently, without coercion?" "I did," I said. "Did you personally perform the clinical duties listed in the affidavit of active practice?" "For 9 years," I said. "Every report, every calibration, every inspection, every 3 a.m. call from a surgeon with an emergency case." My mother made a sound, not quite a word, more like air escaping a tire. My father's hand was shaking. "Niall, he knocked over his teacup. The brown liquid spread across the white linen like a map of something breaking open. "Oh." Imran was shouting now, something about loyalty, about blood, about how I had embarrassed him in front of a client, how I had sabotaged the family. His voice was the only loud thing in the room, bouncing off the hotel walls. I did not raise mine. I did not stand. I did not stand. I reached into the envelope and pulled out the last document, a single sheet of plain paper. "This is my resignation from all informal and formal clinical duties related to Jahan Diagnostic," I said. "Effective immediately. I am terminating my access to the lab software, the partnership supplier accounts, and the equipment service portal. I am also notifying all referring doctors and the health directorate that all future communications should be directed to the managing director on file, as registered with the partnership authority." I placed it on the table next to the spreading tea stain. Mr. Chowdhury stood up. He did not look at Imran. He looked at me and then at Patricia Vance, and then he picked up his own folio. "I think we're done here," he said. My mother reached for my arm. I moved my chair back. "Nusrat," she said, "and I'll wanted cup on your V. Nusrat, please." I looked at her. I looked at the tea spreading across the table. I looked at Imran, who was still standing, his face red, his hands open and empty. I picked up my empty envelope. I walked out of the room. No one followed me. Not then. I stopped. Foundations can be moved. Visual. A laptop screen. A red login error message. Donovan. What? I did not go home. I went to my flat and changed into salwar kameez and sat on my couch with a cup of tea that I let cool while I worked. Then I began the withdrawal. I changed the password on the lab software. The account was in my name, paid for with my personal credit card for the last 4 years, because Imran said the partnership couldn't afford the 5,000 taka monthly fee, and my father had agreed. I cancelled the auto renewal. Nay. I exported the patient database to my personal external drive and deleted the master file from the shared cloud folder. I logged into the partnership bank account, which I had accessed for 9 years, because I was the one who balanced the transactions and caught the errors. And I removed my authorized signatory status through the online portal. The bank sent an automatic notification to the primary account holder, my father, that a signatory had been removed and that pending transactions might be affected. I did not answer my phone when it rang 30 minutes later, my mother's name bright on the screen. I let it ring until the voicemail picked up. On into you. I changed the outgoing message on the center line, the number I had carried in my pocket for 9 years, to a generic message directing all calls to Imran's cell phone, which he never answered before noon. Then I stopped. I had not destroyed anything. I had not hidden information they could not legally obtain. I had simply stopped holding the door open with my shoulder. The machine began to break immediately, the way a clock stops when you stop winding it. Without the software, Imran could not access the patient records to schedule the inspection Mr. Chowdhury had demanded before closing, nor could he prove the clinical certifications he had claimed. Without my signature on the accreditation forms, the directorate could not process the renewal application, which was due in 21 days, and which I had prepared every year for 9 years. Without my personal funds covering the gap between the test fees and the reagent bills, the March salary autodraft bounced for the first time in 4 years, triggering a bank charge of 1,000 taka and a notice of default risk from the lender. I did not cause these things. I simply stopped preventing them. I stopped oiling the machine. Visual. A phone screen. 7 missed calls. A kitchen table at night with 1 lamp on. The fallout took 2 weeks to fully arrive, spreading like water, finding every crack in a floor. Mr. Chowdhury terminated the letter of intent on March 14th, citing material misrepresentation and failure to disclose the true management structure. The hospital chain's attorney sent a formal notice to Imran, copied to my father, outlining the discrepancies in the financial disclosures, the lack of licensed management, and the 1,80,000 taka in undocumented liability. The bank, alerted by the bounced draft and the late fee, called the partnership loan due for review and required a full financial audit before the next payment cycle. My father left me 4 voicemails, each one louder than the last. Imran left 11, the first 3 demanding, the next 4 pleading, the last 4 consisting mostly of silence and breathing. My mother left 3 that started with "How could you do this to your father?" and ended with "We need to talk as a family." I listened to none of them past the first 30 seconds. I deleted them one by one while eating toast at my kitchen counter. The accountant, a man named Gopal, who had prepared the family taxes for a decade and who had always emailed me directly because I was the one who provided the numbers, called me on March 20th. He was not angry. He was confused in a professional way, the way a surgeon might be confused if the patient walked out mid-operation. He said he could not file the partnership return without the center cost documentation, the reagent receipts, and the depreciation schedules, which had always come from me in a green folder by the 15th of the month. I told him to contact Imran. I told him Imran was the managing director. He paused. I could hear him clicking his pen. "Nusrat," he said, his voice dropping, "Imran doesn't know the password to the accounting software. He doesn't even know which version we're running." "I know," I said. Visual, a director inspector's clipboard, an ultrasound screen. The health directorate inspector called Imran directly to schedule the compliance inspection. He was legally required to attend as the managing director of record before the March 15th deadline. Imran did not know what a compliance inspection entailed. He did not know the inspector's name was Sujata Sen. He did not know that the ultrasound machine had a calibration drift the engineer had reported to me 2 months prior, which I had been managing with daily phantom scans and manual adjustments, because my father had refused to pay the 20,000 taka service call, saying we could wait until summer. The inspector found the drift during her routine walkthrough. She issued a notice of deficiency and a conditional accreditation warning. The fine was 10,000 taka. The repair estimate was 50,000, and the equipment supplier threatened to withhold service until the violation was cleared. My father called me again, this time from the cardiac clinic. His blood pressure was 190/110. He said the stress was killing him, that I was killing him, that a daughter should not do this to her family. I told him to call Imran. I told him Imran was the managing director. I told him Imran would handle it. I was calm. I was unbothered. I was free. Visual. A smartphone. 3 gray text bubbles on a screen. The phone calls slowed after a month, tapering like a tide going out and leaving things exposed on the sand. Then they changed. My mother called on a Tuesday in April and left a voicemail. I did not return for 3 days, not out of spite, but because I was busy learning how to live without the sound of her voice in my ear. She said my father was fine, the blood pressure was managed with medication, and that they had hired a lab management consultant to handle the center because Imran couldn't do it and work full-time at the pharmaceutical company. She said the consultant fees were eating into the profits, that he charged 8,000 taka a day, which was highway robbery. She said Imran was struggling at the company because of the stress from the sale falling through, that he had been passed over for the promotion he wanted. She did not apologize. She did not say she had been wrong. She said, "We miss you at lunch. Friday isn't the same." I did not call back. I texted 2 days later. "I'm glad he's well. Take care." That was all. She did not text again. My father texted me in May. It was the first time he had texted me in 3 years, since he had sent me a picture of a sunrise that I had never asked for. The message was 3 sentences, written in the slow, punctuated style of a man who still treats texting like a telegram. I didn't know it was that bad. I thought you were helping because you wanted to. I should have asked. I read it sitting on my balcony in the evening, the concrete still warm from the day. I read it 3 times. It was not an apology. It was a flicker, a small light in a dark room, enough to see the outline of something broken, but not enough to mend it, not enough to make it whole. I did not reply that day. I let the words sit with me. I replied the next morning while my tea brewed. "Thank you for saying that." He did not write back. I did not expect him to. Some doors, once opened, only show you the distance between where you are and where you used to be. Visual, a studio flat, a bookshelf with 12 books, a blue mug. I live in a 1-bedroom now, 10 blocks from the hospital where I work as a senior radiologist, where I was promoted to head of department in April because I could finally stay late without a doctor calling about a missing report. I have a money plant on the windowsill that I water on Saturdays, and it has grown 3 new leaves since I bought it in April. I have a blue mug that I bought with my first paycheck after the reckoning. The first thing I had ever purchased just because I liked the color, not because it was on sale, or because someone else needed it. I wake up early without an alarm. I make tea in the blue mug. I read the newspaper at my small table without checking my phone for emergency reports or partnership bank alerts. On Fridays, I go to the bazaar 3 streets over and buy vegetables I have never cooked before, lao and kochu in strange gourds, and I burn them sometimes and I eat them anyway because they are mine and because no one is watching. I am learning to be alone without being lonely. It is slow. It is uneven. It is enough. My name is Nusrat. I am 33.